table. Put it away. You can pick it up later. But for the purposes of this conversation, we're going to get rid of the idea that love is a feeling. And we're going to use the assertion that love is action. Okay. So if we were to operate from that assumption, I love to tell you to check your assumptions, always audit your assumptions. If we were to operate from the assumption that love is a behavior, love is an action, love is a verb, not a feeling, then leadership automatically has love infused in it. On that basic definition. Okay. The second definition that we're going to use is a distinction that I heard from M. Scott Peck in his book, The Road Less Traveled, that love is the willingness to extend one's self for the growth, spiritual or any other growth of another. The willingness to extend oneself for the growth of another. So this is what I mean by leadership already has love imbued in it. Because when you lead your team, when you lead your company, when you lead your family, when you lead a particular project or whatever concentric circle of your life you might be leading, you are already automatically kind of putting yourself in the position of, I'm willing to extend myself so that this thing can prosper, so that this thing can grow, so that this thing can bloom or flourish or amplify, etc. So from that regard, what if your leadership, if you added love, not like it doesn't already have love in it, but that you were conscious and deliberate and intentional and strategic about it? So I want to give you 3 domains where you can actualize, you can operationalize that love, that willingness to extend yourself for the growth of another. Are you ready? It's three domains. The first domain is in your communication. That's like the basic one, right? Because we have to know that we're just like I started this conversation by speaking about the assumptions and the definitions out of which we're operating this conversation. In the same way, your project, your family, your company, your business, your team, your department, etc. We need to make sure that we are operating from the same language. That's one of the reasons why in many corporate retreats that you've been to, or even the ones that I've led or that I've started, we start with the mission and the vision and the values, right? It's like, are we operating from the same sheet of music? Are we speaking the same language? So the first domain of the willingness to extend oneself for the growth of another is your communication. What am I speaking? What's my language? Are we saying the same thing? And so that sometimes can be worked out in a conversation, but it most certainly is worked out in the pattern of behavior that you see in the ways that we engage with one another. So that's the first domain, is communication. The second, and also let me add this before I move on to the second one. The other part of communication isn't just what you say or what you speak or how you show up, but it's also how you interpret how other people speak and show up, right? So we have to make sure that what we are communicating lands and what they're communicating lands on us the way that they intend as well. When we get that level of clarity, then we can move on to the second domain. Otherwise, we'll get stuck in there. We'll always have to go back to this. What did you mean? What did you say? How did you mean it? Et cetera, right? And so that's the first one, is communication. The second domain of love, behaviorally, observably, is direction. So first is communication, the second one is direction. Are we going the same place? Are we looking at the same horizon? Because you might be thinking, well, yes, I'm extending myself. I'm willing to extend myself for the growth of another. But if your definition of growth and my definition of growth are in opposite directions, then what are we even doing, right? It might look like a tug of war. It might look like a push and pull. It might look like we're fighting for position instead of working towards a common goal, right? So the second one is direction. We have to make sure that we are aiming at the same thing. Yeah. And then the third one is community. Communication, direction, community. That means that we're on the same side of the table, that we see each other as part of each other's team, not oppositional, not adversarial, you're not my op. You're not my enemy or my adversary. You're on my team and I am on your team. When we can operate from the position of community, then we go further, right? You've heard of the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so in the same way, when we are in community with one another, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are doing the same thing. Some of us have different roles. Some of us have different seasons. But in community, that means that we are in harmony with the music that we're playing together, right? So actually, let me use that music as an analogy. Imagine that there's this orchestra, right? And the communication piece is making sure that we have the same sheet of music, right? Because if you're playing Beethoven and I'm playing Vivaldi, we're already in a world of hurt, right? So we have to make sure that we're operating from the same sheet of music. That's the first one. The second one is understanding, right? So direction is the second one. Then we have to make sure that we are in the same spot, that you're not in like the second area and I'm in the first area. No, we're actually heading in this direction. This is our starting point. This is how we continue, et cetera, et cetera. This is where you come in, this is where I come in. So that's direction, right? Community is the harmony. You might be playing violin and I may be playing another wind instrument, saxophone, I don't know, whatever, right? But even if we are playing different instruments, even if we come in a different place in the orchestra, we are heading in the same direction. We are operating from the same sheet of music. And so we make music together. And this is the way that we imbue love into our leadership. It sounds like a larger production than just your violin, than just my trumpet, right? And it doesn't have the cacophony of you being on page 1 and me being on page 3. Mm-hmm. So part of sometimes what people find difficult about this is that we sometimes tend to conflate compliance with agreed. We think if this person is complying with my vision or whatever, then that means that we're in agreement or that we are going in the same direction. And in many companies and many businesses, compliance is just the easiest way to avoid pain. It doesn't mean that it's love and it doesn't mean that it's leadership. And so when you can get really clear about our willingness behaviorally to move in this direction, communicating that, and then asserting our gifts so that we can move forward, then you have a greater chance of not only leading with love, but leading with empathy and with authenticity and integrity in that sense. So I want to disabuse us of the notion that love is this kind of like syrupy, sweet thing. It actually, when you get down to it, it's not very romantic at all. If you think about it, it's not very, fantasy-like at all. Love rolls up its sleeves and gets to work. Yeah. Love says the thing that needs to be said, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's impolite, even when it can turn the table, as one of our great heroes was wont to do in the middle of temple, just flip a table when people weren't acting right. Sometimes love is confrontive. Sometimes love is uncomfortable. Sometimes even rude, but not deceitful. And if you can think about it in this way, you've heard of the word compassion, of course. If you look at the word compassion etymologically, the com means with, the passion means feel, right? So compassion is to feel with another person, right? But feel with what part of that person? Are you feeling with the smallness of them, the ego of them, the limitation of them, or are you feeling with the greatest version of them, right? So when I'm feeling with you, when I have compassion for you, am I having compassion for the greatest part of you, or am I having compassion for the smallest part of you? Sometimes we have compassion, like it's like, oh, they're there. Of course you would lash out. Of course you would have a tantrum. Of course you would just hide or disconnect or drop the ball or blah, 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 blah. And there is definitely usefulness and value in having empathy towards somebody's smallness. But compassion is about feeling with their greatest potential. And that's what love does, right? Love has you be in the willingness to extend yourself for the growth of another. And it has them also inspired to take that action, right? And so what are some of the practical ways to do that behaviorally, observably? Here's some suggestions. If you haven't already done this, these might be challenges that you might be willing to take on. So one of them is, you know that there is somebody in your life who you perhaps have not yet had an uncomfortable conversation, that if you were willing to have that uncomfortable conversation, lay things out on the table, whether it's a grace talk, we've talked about grace talks before, whether it's clearing the air and letting people know where you stand and then asking for that feedback as well. You haven't been willing to have the conversation because you're afraid of what the answer might be or what the results might require of you. Love would have you have that conversation. Here's another. There may be some tolerations in your life. Maybe you're tolerating disorder in your physical space or in your emotional space or in your mental, in the digital space, disorder or chaos or unpredictability, etc., that just has you feeling like you have to walk on eggshells because there's some things that you haven't handled. Love will have you handle that. Whether that means decluttering your physical or your digital space, whether that means getting rid of some stuff that you no longer use, but you have sentimental attachment to it, etc., right? Keeping your energy physically, emotionally, mentally clean, uncluttered. Love would have you do that. Okay. And here's another one that perhaps we don't talk a lot about, because we the common conversations about fixing. But maybe there's nothing to fix, but there is a risk to take, to get over, right? To elevate, to amplify, to grow into your next best version of yourself. So perhaps maybe there isn't a remedial conversation to be had or a remedial fixing, decluttering thing to do. Perhaps it's just a risk to take to move forward. Maybe you haven't set that proposal. Maybe you haven't called that prospect or that lead or that person that said, let me know when you're ready to get started and I'm ready for you. And you're like, I don't know if they'll pay me this. This is what I want to get paid, but I don't know if they're willing to say yes. Maybe that's the risk you've been unwilling to take. Or to say, oh my God, that's a big brand. I don't know if they'll go for a small fry like me. Who said you're a small fry? Who told you you were naked? Right? And so taking that risk could be the willingness to extend yourself, that you've been waiting for permission for somebody to tell you, you have permission to do this. You got what it takes to take that risk and have it happen. And here's the good news. And then we can start talking and have some questions. Here's the good news about the risks that you have been unwilling to take. Is that sometimes we are unwilling to take a certain risk because we are afraid of the no. Good news, when you don't open your mouth, you are already in the no. No is the default position. I didn't think that was going to be so funny. No is already the default position, right? Because did you get the check? No. Have they signed the proposal? No. Did they introduce you to the person? No. You are already at a no. So the thing you're afraid of, you're sitting in. So you might as well go for it. How about that? And so I would love to hear from anybody who's willing to come on and chat with me. Um, what is the most present way that you could extend yourself for the growth of another right now? What is the most present way that you can express that love in your leadership? Maybe in your project, maybe in your family, maybe in your business, in your company, maybe for yourself. Let's talk about it.
And you had to confront us that way on a Monday morning.
In your Kool-Aid, already.
uh, one what's showing up for me is that the very feelings, like you started by saying love is not a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the most direct ways I can make a difference or extend myself is to go beyond that. I don't know if it's that way for everybody, but I've always known love is a feeling, damn it. And so to confront that it's not, and to confront that it's action, uh, puts me in a place that I think what I can do to extend myself for the growth of another is to check my feelings and my emotions. Because in this conversation, one of the things I'm discovering, Monikah, is that though love is not a feeling, when I take the action to generate communications through a conversation I'm unwilling to have, that's what creates the alignment and the same direction you were talking about. So the same direction cannot be assumed.
Right.
I actually have to talk it through.
Imagine that.
And sometimes it's what I'm feeling inside that keeps me from not talking it through, because I just want the feeling that's there to confirm it. Well, gosh, if
Yeah.
I'm feeling good, it must be aligned.
Yes.
And if I'm not feeling good, it must not be aligned. And then there's that resignation that's right there with it. That's as well. If I'm not feeling good, if my gut's telling me it ain't so, well, it ain't so. I might as well just quit. So what I'm seeing for myself is checking in, maybe, even though love is not a feeling, maybe the feeling that's present now gives me an on-ramp to love the action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Thank you for presencing that.
Yeah.
I wanna take something that you said and dive more deeply into it. And that is, you said, if I'm not feeling it, if my gut is telling me something else, and I want to
Mhm.
separate those in the
Mhm.
nuance that they are, the distinction that they are. Because sometimes the feeling that we're having is our ego speaking, and the gut feeling, gut
Mhm.
voice is actually our inner wisdom moving us forward. If you sit with yourself long enough, your gut will tell you you're phoning it in.
Mhm.
Uh, you're being a coward. You got to call that person. And the way that I know, I don't know how it happens for any of us here, but the way that I know that it's my inner voice, that it's my gut sense, is that it's it's not
It's
loud. It's not.
uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, but it's very much like a matter of fact thing. It's like, yeah, you phoned that in. You know what I mean? It doesn't have judgment. It doesn't have an indictment on it. It's just kind of like calls it as it is, and
Mhm.
it's very raw and unfiltered. No charge on it. Whereas when I have a feeling about something and like, there's this fear, there's this contraction, and that's how I know the difference. When it's my ego speaking, there's this fear thing, this judgment thing, this image thing. But when it's my inner voice, when it's my gut speaking, it's very matter of fact and calls a spade a spade.
Like the gut feeling, the thought just came to mind, like gut feeling is aligned direction. Like
Mm-hmm.
go there, go there.
Yes.
That's aligned with what you want. Go there. That's aligned with who you say you are. Go there. That's aligned with the relationship you really want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that nuance occur for you too? Do you notice the difference?
Say that again?
Does that difference also occur for you? Once I articulated, are you like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, that
once you
actually does happen?
articulated it, it's like, yeah, that's the direction I want.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, that would be the gut feeling as opposed to something in my head looking
right.
to justify or invalidate something.
Yes.
Yeah. The other
They
thing
do
that,
reside in different places in our bodies, doesn't it? Yeah.
the other thing I just got is that I could also use all of this to experience love for myself. Like when you say, hey, yeah, you're being a coward. Yeah, you're being a butt about this.
Yes.
uh, Without the judgment, I can use what's present to check in with myself and love myself by having a conversation with myself that leads me to being aligned with who I am. And
Yeah.
and and the piece about community, it could be just a community of two or a community of me where I'm aligned with myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, we sometimes talk about the ego like it's this undue burden, this like petulant child that we just have to tolerate. But if you think about it, the ego is there for a reason. It's there to keep you alive and it's there to keep you safe. It is on your team. It's not the boss though. If we make the ego the boss, then it's just going to run rampant because it has ideas about what is safe based on the past, not based
Mhm.
on your vision, not based on your future, right? And so we would do well to listen to it, just like we would listen to a child having a tantrum. Have you ever tried to quiet down a child having a tantrum? It is an exercise in futility. You have to kind of get down on your knees and be like, okay, what's wrong, Timmy? And then in 3 minutes, it's over. They're done, right? So we got to do the same thing with our own inner child and with our ego and be like, okay, what is the problem, right? And sometimes we just have the reassurance, like, okay, now go sit down in the back seat because you ain't driving. You can come along, but you ain't driving, right? And so when we have that conversation, that direction, we create community with different parts of ourselves. Then we can have a somewhat smoother ride, even if they're doing that backseat driving thing that ego typically does. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you for that, Sorrel. That was very juicy.
Thank you. Thank you. Like I said, it's Monday morning and you're just putting everybody in the hot seat already.
That's
Who
awesome.
else?
Who else has something? Who wants to come up and chat?
Well, for me, first of
Yeah.
all, good morning.
Good morning, Stan.
Leadership Huddle, good morning. For me, it's like it's having this. I think it might be a degree of fear, but it's like knowing that there's more I need to do um, to help. It's not fine on all of my own cylinders. That kind of like I feel is being unfair from a love perspective to those that I want to help develop. And I know that it takes more of me being really, really showing up. Um, it takes more of me. And it's kind of like I have this feeling that I don't want to juggle too many balls in the air at one time because I feel like, you know, uh, I don't know how they're going to work out by, juggling that many. It's like going into myself. There's more than I can do. There's another arm that could throw a ball up, but I think it might be like, maybe you need to stick with the number that you have because at least you're managing that part of it. But at the same time, knowing that you need to throw another one up, you need to throw more up, but you don't want to see them all fall. You're
Well,
juggling what you are juggling. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, but that would bring us back to the three ingredients, right? The first being communication. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we assume that somebody wants us to take on something. That's not what they're asking for, but we wouldn't know unless we had a conversation about it so that we can then come to a direction and then be in community, right? It's like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
so let me give you an example, a recent example. A friend of mine knows I have experience in the financial services field and I know what it takes to put a business plan in front of a bank, in front of an investor to get some funding, right? And so he says to me, I want your help in finalizing this business plan so I can get this funding for this particular project. Okay. But help could be write it, introduce me. It could mean so many things, right? And so before I let myself get overwhelmed about all the things that might come with the idea of creating and finalizing a business plan and put it in front of an investor, let me just ask, what kind of help do you need? Right. And so he said, I just want you to look at my numbers and see if it makes sense and tell me what are play a devil's advocate. And what would an investor say no to and how to fix it? Oh, great. That means I don't have to write it. I don't have to do research. I don't have to format it. I don't have to come up with anything except look at what you already have, tell you what I see might be wrong with it, and tell you how to fix it. That's fantastic. Now I've skipped the whole idea of being overwhelmed because I could do that in like an hour, right? And so that's why I'm saying that this idea of oh, maybe I'm taking on too much. You don't yet know what somebody's inviting you to take on until you actually get clear, communicate, and assert or audit those assumptions so that you know that you're moving in the right direction and being in community about it.
Okay. And I definitely see it from that perspective. I think that what I've actually done is identify that some of those things are things I need to do. Right.
Yes.
Or that I
So
need
it's a
to do.
capacity thing.
Yes, a capacity thing.
Great.
Yeah.
So again, getting in communication. Here's my capacity right now. Here's what my capacity will be in a month, in a week, and after I've had some sleep, after I had something to eat. I might have a different capacity, right?
Okay.
And then let's create a timeline for what's available and what I can do and how I can show up. Or if that's an internal conversation with yourself, you're negotiating your own capacity with yourself. Again, communication, direction, community.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sounds great, Stan. Because sometimes we feel so guilty about what we can and cannot do, and what we should and shouldn't do, etc. And it's like, sometimes it's a capacity thing. Okay, one last one. Anybody else? Question, comment, vent? Yes.
Not that it's relevant, but I like acronyms. I just realized that CDC.
Yes, CDC. Yes.
Communication
That's
direction.
how we can avoid a lot of infectious diseases in our leadership. Yes. Absolutely. That's great. Well, thank you everybody for being here with us. I hope that you add this little bit of wisdom from today into the love that you infuse in your leadership, that it's practical, that it's observable, that it's measurable, that it is a communicable disease, right? It's not just our silence or our complicitness with dysfunction that is communicable. Our leadership, our love, our intention, our strategy, our contributions are also communicable diseases. Or maybe I'll say communicable conditions. So with that, remember always the principles that we speak of here in the Leadership Huddle. Always do your best to get yourself some sleep. First of all, have you noticed that you're a different person when you don't have enough sleep? Just handle that. Get yourself at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Stress less, eat more plant-based food, laugh, give of yourself, move. Remember that dancing and twerking are kundalini raising exercises for your spiritual mastery. And always audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you, guys. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.